The room was full of men who did not blink. Kang Do-hyun sat at the head of the long table, jaw tight, hands folded like a man praying to a god he no longer trusted. Behind him, two men in black suits stood so still they could have been carved from stone. Outside the window, Seoul glittered like it had no idea what was happening 40 floors up. Every man in that room had made peace with silence. It was how business was done. Silence meant control. Silence meant fear was doing its job. Then the door opened. Nobody in that room expected a child. A small girl in a camel-colored coat walked in, her patent shoes clicking softly against the marble floor. Two neat puffs framed her face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. The men, the suits, the tension thick enough to touch. The way a child studies a puzzle before deciding it isn't that complicated after all. One of the men reached for his phone, unsure what protocol existed for this. There wasn't one. Kang Do-hyun rose halfway out of his chair, something between alarm and disbelief crossing his face. How did she? But the girl wasn't looking at the guards. She wasn't looking at the door or the tension, or the two men behind him standing like statues. She walked straight toward Kang Do-hyun. She stopped in front of him, tilted her head, and studied his face the way she studied everything, carefully without fear. "Mister," she said. "Are you okay?" Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Kang Do-hyun, a man who had buried friends and buried enemies without shedding a single tear, felt something crack behind his ribs, quiet, sudden, like a window fracturing from a sound too small to explain it. "Mina," he whispered, like her name was something fragile he was afraid to drop. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. 3 weeks earlier, none of this existed. Mina was 7 with a habit of counting things: stairs, cracks in the sidewalk, the buttons on her mother's coat. She noticed things. She always had. Her mother, Nene Frederick, noticed everything too, but for different reasons. Nene was a cybersecurity consultant, the kind of woman companies called when something had gone wrong and needed to disappear quietly. She was 35, tall, elegant in a way that made boardrooms go quiet when she walked in. She wore tailored blazers in ivory and charcoal, her heels sharp enough to sound like punctuation. That morning she knelt in front of Mina, straightening the collar of her daughter's coat. "Remember the rules?" Nene asked. "Don't talk to strangers. Stay where you can see the elevator. Don't touch anything shiny," Mina recited, bored. Nene laughed, soft and warm. "That last one's new. You added it after I touched that vase at Mrs. Yana's office." "That vase cost more than our rent, Mina." Mina shrugged, unbothered, and Nene kissed the top of her head. They were in Seoul because of a contract, 3 months high pay, higher risk. Nene didn't talk about the risk part in front of Mina, but she felt it, the way people feel weather changing before the sky does anything about it. The office building where Nene worked belonged on paper to a shipping company. Underneath that paper was something else entirely, something with Kang Do-hyun's name attached to it, though never in writing anyone could trace. Kang Do-hyun did not look like the men in movies. He didn't scowl for effect. He wore quiet, expensive suits, deep charcoal, sometimes navy, always pressed like they'd never dared to wrinkle. He spoke softly, which made people more afraid of him, not less. Loud men could be predicted. Quiet men could not. He'd built his organization on one rule: loyalty above everything. Betray him, and there was no coming back. Everyone knew it. Everyone respected it. Which was why when his right hand, a man named Junho, was accused of leaking information to a rival syndicate, the accusation alone was enough to end him. "I didn't do it," Junho said, kneeling in the same room Mina would later walk into. His voice cracked. "Do-hyuna, you know me. 15 years. You know me." Kang Do-hyun looked at him the way a man looks at a photograph of someone who died a long time ago. "I don't know anyone anymore," he said quietly. "I thought I did. I was wrong every time. Please. My daughter. Get him out," Kang Do-hyun said, and turned away before the sentence finished leaving his mouth. That night, alone in his apartment on the 40th floor, Kang Do-hyun stood at the window, hands resting on the cold glass. The city below him glittered like it didn't know what he'd just done. He thought about Junho's face. He thought about the 15 years. He thought about how certainty used to feel like armor, and now it felt like something closer to grief. He didn't know yet that the accusation had been a lie. He didn't know that somewhere in the same building on a different floor, a woman named Nene Frederick had been hired to trace a security breach, and that the trail led somewhere he would never have guessed. And he certainly didn't know that his path was about to cross with a 7-year-old girl who counted things, who noticed things, and who had, 3 days earlier, quietly watched something happen in a stairwell that she didn't understand yet, but would never forget. Mina hadn't told her mother. Not because she was scared. She simply hadn't found the right moment. She was still counting it in her head, the way she counted everything, waiting for it to make sense. She didn't know his name yet. She didn't know what he'd done, or what he was about to lose. All she knew was that she'd seen a man's face in that stairwell, worried, hurried, hiding something under his coat, and something about it had stayed lodged in her memory like a splinter. She would remember his face when it mattered most. She just didn't know that yet. The next morning, Nene's heels echoed through the marble lobby of the Chanho Trading Building. Mina's small hand wrapped around 2 of her fingers. Mina had a coloring book tucked under her arm and a juice box she was saving for later, rationing it the way she rationed everything worth keeping. "You'll be with Miss Park today," Nene said, stepping into the elevator. "She's got snacks. She's got puzzles. She does not, under any circumstances, let you near the stairwell." Understood. Why not the stairwell? Because offices are boring and stairwells make children curious, and curious children wander. Mina considered this with the seriousness of a lawyer reviewing a contract. "I wasn't curious yesterday." Nene raised an eyebrow. "You counted 41 stairs yesterday, Mina. That's not curious. That's math." The elevator doors opened on the 18th floor, and Nene laughed despite herself, kissing the top of Mina's head before handing her off to Miss Park, a soft-spoken assistant with kind eyes and a stack of coloring books thicker than a dictionary. Nene's real work began the moment she sat down at her borrowed desk on the 22nd floor. 3 monitors. Lines of code scrolling faster than most people could read. She'd been brought in under a contract that said security audit, but 3 days into the job, she'd found something that didn't belong. A data trail leaking out of the building's internal servers, routed through an account that shouldn't have existed. She traced it once, then twice to be sure. The account belonged to a man named Junho. She frowned at the screen, tapping her pen against her desk. Something about it didn't sit right. The access times didn't match anything in his actual login history. It was almost too clean, like someone had built the evidence rather than left it behind by accident. "That's not how people leak things," she murmured to herself. "That's how people frame someone." She sat back, arms crossed, staring at the screen the way she stared at every problem that didn't add up, like it owed her an explanation. 2 floors down, Kang Do-hyun sat across from his second-in-command, a broad-shouldered man named Tae-sung, who had known him since they were teenagers running errands for men far crueler than either of them had become. "You didn't have to send him away like that," Tae-sung said carefully. 15 years, Hyung. 15 years is exactly why it matters, Kang Do-hyun said. If loyalty doesn't mean something after 15 years, it never meant anything. And if he's telling the truth? Kang Do-hyun didn't answer right away. He looked out the window instead, at the skyline he'd spent half his life trying to own a piece of. "Then I've made a mistake I can't undo," he said finally. But the evidence was clean. Too clean to argue with. Tae-sung studied him. "Too clean," he repeated slowly. "You just said that like it bothers you." Kang Do-hyun didn't respond, but something in his jaw tightened, the way it always did when a thought refused to leave him alone. Down the hall, Mina sat at a small table with Ms. Park, coloring a picture of a tiger with purple stripes because, in her opinion, regular orange tigers were boring and predictable. "Miss Park," Mina said, not looking up from her drawing. "Who was that man in the stairwell?" Miss Park blinked. "What stairwell, sweetheart?" "The one by the vending machines. 3 days ago." He looked scared. Miss Park's smile faltered, just slightly, before she recovered it. "I don't know what you mean, Mina. Maybe you should stick to your tiger." Mina glanced up at her, the way she looked at things that didn't add up, quiet, patient, unconvinced. She didn't push. She simply filed it away, the same way she filed away stair counts and coat buttons and the exact color of a stranger's tie. She went back to her tiger. But she was still counting. That evening, Nene picked Mina up later than usual, her expression distracted in a way Mina had learned to recognize. The look her mother got when a puzzle wouldn't leave her alone. "Long day?" Mina asked, swinging her legs in the back of the car. Long day, Nene agreed. Someone's trying to make an innocent man look guilty, and I don't like liars, Mina. You know that. You always say liars are cowards wearing a nice suit. Nene glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror, smiling despite the weight sitting on her chest. I did say that. I stand by it. Is the man in trouble? I think so. I think it's not his fault, though. Mina went quiet for a moment, watching the city lights slide past the window. Then carefully, the way she approached everything that felt important, she said, I saw a man in the stairwell 3 days ago. He looked scared, and he was hiding something under his coat. Miss Park didn't want to talk about it. Nene's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. She kept her voice light, unwilling to startle the moment away. What did he look like, baby? Mina described him, the height, the gray coat, the way his hands shook when he shoved something into his bag. It wasn't much. But it was specific, and specific was the one thing Nene's entire investigation had been missing. Mina, Nene said slowly, I need you to remember everything about that man. Everything. Can you do that? Mina nodded, solemn, the way children are solemn when adults finally take them seriously. I already have, she said. I count things, remember? Nene looked at her daughter in the mirror for a long moment. Pride and worry tangled together in her chest. Whatever was happening in that building, her daughter had just become part of it, not through danger but through memory, through the simple, unshakable fact that Mina noticed things other people missed. She didn't know yet how far that memory would travel. She didn't know it would end in a room full of men who didn't blink, with her daughter standing in front of the most feared man in the city, asking if he was okay. But something in her gut told her the pieces were already moving. Nene didn't sleep that night. She sat at the small desk in their rented apartment, laptop glowing in the dark, a legal pad beside her covered in handwriting that grew messier the later it got. Mina's description of the man in the stairwell kept circling back to her. The gray coat, the shaking hands, the way he'd shoved something into his bag like it was burning him. She pulled the building's visitor logs. Cross-reference timestamps. Cross-reference badge swipes. At 2:14 a.m. she found him. Not Junho. A junior analyst named Yeo Sangmin. Badge in at 9:47 a.m. the day Mina described. Badge out at 9:53, 6 minutes, on a floor he had no business being on. 6 minutes was enough time to plant a data trail dressed up to look like someone else's fingerprints. Nene sat back in her chair, exhaling slowly. Got you, she whispered. She thought about calling someone. But calling who? She was a contractor, not police, and the people who ran this building weren't the kind who called police for anything. She thought of Kang Do-hyun's name, spoken in careful, lowered voices around the office, the kind of name people said like it cost something to say it. She decided to wait, gather more, be certain before she moved. She didn't know that certainty was a luxury about to run out. The next morning, Kang Do-hyun sat across from Sangmin in a private meeting room on the 31st floor. A folder opened between them. Sangmin's hands were folded neatly on the table. His expression practiced into something close to calm. You've been quiet since Junho left, Kang Do-hyun said. I didn't know him well, Sangmin said. It's not my place to have an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Most people just know when to hide it. Kang Do-hyun tapped the folder. Tell me something. If the leak wasn't Junho, who would it be? Sangmin's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. I wouldn't know, sir. No, Kang Do-hyun said quietly. I don't suppose you would. He let the silence stretch, watching Sangmin's composure hold and hold and hold. Too well, too evenly, like a man who had rehearsed staying calm rather than a man who simply was calm. Kang Do-hyun had built an empire reading rooms like this one. He knew the difference between innocence and performance. He just hadn't trusted his own instincts in years. Not since the first time trusting them had cost him someone he loved. That'll be all, he said finally. Sangmin left the room without looking back. Kang Do-hyun stared at the closed door for a long time after he'd gone. Downstairs, Mina sat cross-legged on the floor of Ms. Park's office, building a tower out of paperclips because she'd finished her coloring book and declared crayons unchallenging. Miss Park, she said, not looking up. Do you know a man named Sangmin? Miss Park's pen stopped moving. Why do you ask? Because that's who I saw. In the stairwell. I heard someone say his name in the hallway this morning, and it matched his voice. He sounds like he's trying to be quiet, even when nobody's listening. Miss Park set her pen down slowly, choosing her next words like she was picking through glass. Mina, sweetheart, you shouldn't repeat things like that. Not here. Why not? It's true. Because true things can still get people in trouble. Mina looked up at her, unblinking, the paperclip tower forgotten in her hands. Isn't that what's supposed to happen? To the person who did something wrong. Miss Park didn't answer. She only smiled, tight and unconvincing, and suggested Mina try building a bigger tower instead. Mina went back to her paperclips. But she was still counting, filing away the way Miss Park's smile hadn't reached her eyes, the way her voice had gone careful the moment Sangmin's name came up. That evening, Nene arrived earlier than usual, her coat still buttoned, urgency in her steps that Mina had learned to read like weather. We need to talk, Nene said, crouching to Mina's eye level in the hallway outside Miss Park's office. The man you saw. Do you remember his voice? I heard it today, Mina said. It's him. Sangmin. Nene closed her eyes briefly, something between relief and dread passing over her face. Mina, I need you to be sure. Completely sure. This isn't a game. I'm always sure, Mina said, a little offended. I don't guess, Mommy. I count. Nene almost laughed, the sound catching somewhere between her throat and her chest. She pulled Mina into a hug instead, holding her a beat longer than usual. You did good, baby, she whispered. You did so good. That night, Nene compiled everything. The badge logs, the 6-minute gap, Mina's description, the mismatch in Sangmin's own alibi from the week before. She built it the way she built every case. Clean, undeniable, impossible to argue with. She thought about who to bring it to. She thought about Kang Do-hyun's reputation, the stories whispered in the break room about what happened to people who crossed him, the stories she didn't fully believe but couldn't fully dismiss either. Then she thought about Junho, a man she'd never met, sent away for something he didn't do. She thought about her own daughter's voice saying, "Isn't that what's supposed to happen?" To the person who did something wrong? She closed her laptop, decision made. Tomorrow, she murmured to the empty room. Tomorrow I end this. She didn't know that tomorrow would not go the way she planned. She didn't know that Sangmin, sensing the walls closing in, would move faster than any of them expected, and that his fear would put both her and Mina exactly where they shouldn't be. She only knew, lying awake that night, that the truth was finally close enough to touch. What no one in the building knew, not Taesung, not Kang Do-hyun, not even the men who'd worked alongside him for years, was that Sangmin hadn't set out to destroy Junho out of malice. He'd done it out of debt. 2 years earlier, before Chonho trading, before the tailored suits and the careful silence he'd learned to wear like armor, Sangmin had borrowed money from people who didn't forgive lateness. His mother's hospital bills. A younger sister still in school. He told himself it was temporary. It never is. The rival syndicate that approached him hadn't asked for much at first. A schedule here, a shipment date there. Small things. By the time he understood the size of what he'd become part of, he was too far in to climb back out. They wanted Junho gone. Junho was loyal in a way that made him dangerous to people who profited from disloyalty. Sangmin built the trail because it was the only currency he had left to offer. He hated himself for it. That was the part he hadn't planned on, the hating. Nene didn't know any of this when she agreed to meet him. She only knew the shape of the lie didn't sit right, the way a column of numbers doesn't sit right when it's been quietly rearranged. You said you had information about Junho, she said, once they were in the records room. Mina still on the floor nearby with her paperclip tower. Sangmin's hands weren't steady. I need you to stop the audit. That's not information. That's a request. It's the only thing standing between me and people who don't ask twice, Sangmin said, and for the first time, his voice cracked in a way that sounded less like a threat and more like a man drowning. You don't understand what happens to people who owe the wrong debts in this city. Nene's expression shifted, not fear, but something closer to recognition. She'd seen this before in other buildings, other audits. Not evil. Just desperate men making evil choices because desperation rarely leaves room for better ones. Then tell Kang Do-hyun the truth, she said. Let him decide what mercy looks like. That's not my call to make. It's not yours either. He doesn't have mercy. He has rules. Maybe, Nene said. Or maybe you never gave him the chance to have both. It was Mina, still sitting on the floor, who broke the tension neither adult knew how to close. You're the man from the stairwell, she said, and this time her voice wavered. Smaller than it had been in earlier tellings, the bravado of a child suddenly aware that the story she'd been carrying had real weight to it. I didn't want to tell on you. I just didn't want the other man to be blamed for something he didn't do. Sangmin looked at her, and something in his face broke differently than fear, closer to shame. I know, he said quietly. That's the problem. None of this was ever about you. Taesung arrived minutes later, flanked by two of Kang Do-hyun's men, drawn by a hunch he'd been chasing since morning. Boss wants to see you, he told Sangmin. Then, glancing at Nene and Mina, all of you. In the room upstairs, Kang Do-hyun listened to Mina's account in full. The stairwell, the gray coat, the shaking hands, but unlike before, he didn't accept it in a single breath. He sat back, arms crossed, studying Sangmin with the particular stillness of a man who'd been wrong once already and refused to be wrong twice on instinct alone. Convince me, he said. Not her. You. Sangmin told him everything. The debt, the syndicate, the sister still in school, the mother's hospital bills he'd never once mentioned to anyone in 3 years of quiet, competent work. His voice didn't rise. It simply emptied out, the way confessions do when a man has been holding them too long. Kang Do-hyun listened without interrupting. When it was over, the room stayed silent for a long moment, long enough that Mina slipped her hand into her mother's, unsure, for the first time, whether telling the truth had been the right thing after all. I sent Junho away on evidence I didn't question closely enough, Kang Do-hyun said finally. I won't make that mistake twice. Not with punishment, and not with mercy. He looked at Taesung. He repays what he owes. Under our protection, not theirs. And he never touches syndicate business again as long as he lives. Sangmin's shoulders dropped, not in relief exactly, but in the particular exhaustion of a man who'd expected an ending and been handed a second chance instead. Why? He asked, barely audible. Kang Do-hyun looked at Mina before he answered. Because someone reminded me today that honor isn't about being right the first time. It's about what you're willing to fix once you know you weren't. Mina, still holding her mother's hand, finally let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. So I didn't get him in trouble forever? No, Kang Do-hyun said gently. You got him a chance to be better than the choice he made. That's rarer than punishment. It's harder to give. Nene watched her daughter's small shoulders relax, pride and relief tangled together in her chest, and understood, in that moment, that Mina hadn't just uncovered a truth. She'd taught a room full of powerful men what to do with it. The room emptied slowly. Sangmin was led out by two of Kang Do-hyun's men, not in restraints, not in fear for his life, but with the particular heaviness of a man who'd been given something he hadn't expected. A second chance with conditions attached. Taesung followed to arrange the details of his repayment, his protection, the quiet unraveling of a debt that had nearly cost an innocent man everything. That left Kang Do-hyun, Nene, and Mina standing in a room that suddenly felt too large for the three of them. Kang Do-hyun crouched down to Mina's eye level, the way he had upstairs, except now there was no audience left to perform stillness for. Just a tired man and a girl who'd spent the last hour being braver than most adults he employed. You did something today most grown men in this building couldn't do, he said. You told the truth even when it scared you. Mina considered this. It didn't scare me. It scared him. She glanced toward the door Sangmin had disappeared through. I think that's different. Kang Do-hyun almost smiled. A rare, unguarded thing on a face built for silence. It's very different, he agreed. Most people confuse the two. Nene watched them, arms crossed loosely, something unclenching in her chest for the first time in days. She'd spent the whole week bracing for consequences she couldn't predict. She hadn't expected the outcome to look like this. A mafia boss kneeling in front of her daughter, speaking to her like she mattered because she did. Thank you, Kang Do-hyun said, rising, addressing Nene now, for trusting your daughter enough to bring her forward. Most parents would have kept her out of it entirely. Most parents don't have a daughter who counts stairwells, Nene said. I've learned to listen when she notices things. Junho returned 3 days later. He walked into the same room where he'd once knelt and begged for a truth no one believed. And this time Kang Do-hyun stood to meet him halfway. An unusual gesture, one the men in the room quietly noted and never forgot. I was wrong, Kang Do-hyun said, no preamble, no softening. 15 years, and I let a clean lie outweigh them. Junho's jaw tightened, old hurt still sitting close to the surface. You didn't just doubt me. You sent me away in front of everyone. I know. Kang Do-hyun didn't look away from it. I won't ask you to forget that. I'm only asking what it takes to earn the trust back. Junho studied him for a long moment, searching perhaps for the performance he'd learned to expect from powerful men. He didn't find one. Time, Junho said finally. That's what it takes. Then I'll give you time, Kang Do-hyun said. As much as you need. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was honest, and in that room, honesty was worth more than the apology either of them had expected to give or receive. Nene's contract ended 2 weeks later. On her last day, Kang Do-hyun met her and Mina in the lobby, dressed in deep navy, unhurried in a way he rarely allowed himself to be during business hours. Mina had her hand wrapped around his fingers before either adult quite registered it happening. The two of them had developed, in the space of a few short weeks, an easy familiarity that neither fully explained and neither questioned. She'll do great things, Kang Do-hyun said, crouching to return Mina to her mother's side. The kind of things this city won't be ready for. She usually is, Nene said, smiling. Mina looked up at him one last time, serious in the way she reserved for things that mattered. Bye, mister. Try not to be sad anymore. I'll try, Kang Do-hyun said. Because of you, I think I finally can. He watched them walk out into the Seoul afternoon, mother and daughter, elegant and unhurried, and stood there a moment longer than necessary, the way people do when they've been given something they didn't know they needed. 15 years of rules had taught him control. One quiet week with a 7-year-old had taught him the difference between control and honor. He finally understood which one had been missing. If this story moved you, you know what to do. Subscribe to Black Silk Stories, comment your favorite moment and stay close, because Afro-Korean stories like this one are just getting started.